Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to my guide to Alphascape V2 on the Savage difficulty. To access the Savage version of this encounter, you must first clear Alphascape on normal and finish all of its quests. You'll then receive a quest in Rhalgrs that will unlock the Savage difficulty. Alphascape V2 Savage drops itemable 400 heads, hands, and boots, as well as Scavian Shellix to upgrade Tombstone accessories, and a military grade Tombstone to purchase eye-level 390 Tombstone weapons. Your first kill of the week will also reward an Alphascape Datalog V2. 6 of these can be exchanged for an armor piece of your choice, or 4 can be spent to get a Shellick. You can only qualify for loot on your first kill in a given week, and keep in mind that if you complete V2 Savage without completing V1 Savage in a given week, that you are going to be forfeiting loot there as well. These loot limitations will lift sometime after 4.5. This guide does assume you're somewhat familiar with the normal mode version of the encounter. If you'd like to skip to a specific phase, please use the description in the video for timestamps. Apologies because I will be using some of my stream footage from my first kill, but we also have Kipling and Spheoperian from Elysium donating footage for this guide, so thank you to them as well. On Savage, Midgardsormr has less AoE markers and requires a bit more precision to get through. We put markers in the 4 cardinal directions near the center of the room for orientation and mechanics later, and we try to keep Midgardsormr in the center throughout the fight, facing either north or south. Use these markers and assign 1 DPS and 1 tanker healer to each of the 4 cardinal directions. You'll also need to agree on which inter-cardinal direction these same groups will use for certain mechanics. Also, he does have his tank buster tail end, and it just hits really hard here, no need to tank swap for it. Just like with normal mode, Midgardsormr will occasionally center himself in the room and perform aerial spins to determine what skill he uses next. If he spins horizontally twice in a row, get away from him. If he spins horizontally and then vertically, it means get under his hitbox. If he spins vertically twice in a row, it means he'll do a plus sign shaped AoE based on the direction he's facing. And on Savage, he can also do a vertical plus horizontal spin, which will do an X shaped AoE based on where he's facing. There's no AoE markers at all for this, so watching his spin patterns is important. The start of the fight will be a slew of spinning patterns combined with some other mechanics as well. Right off the bat, he'll do a vertical spin pattern, so be prepared for the second spin to see where you have to dodge. Immediately after this, he'll do a horizontal spin pattern that is fixed to be a double horizontal spin. Seriously, if it isn't fixed after hours of us never seeing it go the other way, I'm going to be really upset. Between spin number 1 and number 2, he'll use Morn, so we all stack behind him for all 4 of the split damage hits on the party before getting out of melee range. Next will be another horizontal spin pattern, but the second spin will be random. All 8 players will get Earthshakers, which need to not overlap in a cone, so assign 8 different directions for the players to stand around Midi. You'll need to react to the second spin he does, and either move into his hitbox if he does a vertical spin second, or away from Midgardsormr if he does the horizontal spin second. His next spin pattern is a vertical one, and it additionally has a tail end and lightning AoEs on each of the 4 DPS. Use the assigned groups we established earlier to make sure that no matter which spin is second, that 2 DPS don't end up in the same safe spot, and mitigate that tail end. Up next is a new tank mechanic called Time Immemorial. This attack will place a debuff on each tank, and each debuff makes each tank unable to take attacks from grounded or airborne enemies depending on which one they get. The orange debuff means you must avoid being hit by grounded enemies, and the other debuff means you must avoid being hit by airborne enemies. If you are auto-attacked by the enemy that is applicable to your debuff, then you will receive a short doom effect, which will kill you when it wears off. The effect seems to apply randomly between the 2 tanks, meaning the main tank can receive the grounded one even when tanking the airborne Midgardsormr, resulting in no action to be taken at all. The tanks will need to quickly look at their debuffs and determine if they need to tank swap before Midgardsormr's next attack. Luckily, while Time Immemorial is casting, an animation will appear, a little circle around each of the tanks in the color of the debuff they're going to get. So you can do your provokes and shirks in the middle of the cast, and you definitely don't want to wait till it's over. For phase 1 here, just make sure that the airborne tank doesn't take any autos. After Time Immemorial applies, you'll get another tail end before Midgardsormr does another horizontal spin pattern. Between spins, he'll ice the ground, causing players to slide for the next few mechanics. You'll first need to slide either into or out of his hitbox, depending on which of the second spins he does. Then the healers will be marked with ice AoEs, which they just slide to the corners without overlapping. Finally, 2 DPS will be targeted by Rai, which just hits an area over and over again with pulsing AoEs. Healers slide away from the group, DPS move out of your Rais and avoid stacking them, and you'll be fine. There will be one final horizontal pattern here in phase 1. After the first spin, Midgardstormer will fire targeted AoEs on party members before finishing his second spin. We have the party stack up and just either dodge into or out of his hitbox depending on which spin we get. Ice is still on the ground, so be careful of that. Not the slidey ice, those ice AoEs that were dropped earlier. Once you do this final spin, you'll move into the add phase. The add phase in this fight is super simple. A dragon spawns in the center and a ton of nails spawn around the room. Before you kill the dragon, kill all the nails. Now there are some small nails that tether to other nails, which makes them large, so you'll need to kill the small nails to weaken the large nails enough to kill those. This entire phase can be done without too much coordination, just so long as all the nails and the dragon dies. There is one thing though, the tanks need to be careful of the dragon. It spawns with enmity on the tank that Midgardstormer was attacking at the end of phase 1. However, the dragon is a grounded enemy, which means if it hits Midgardstormer's previous aggro target, which should be the grounded debuff tank, they're going to get killed. You'll just need to have the tank with the Airborne debuff quickly provoke the dragon upon it appearing. Feel free to throw a GCD or two on it too. It might be taking 0 damage, but you are still generating enmity on it, so you just want to be safe. Once your Airborne tank has it under control, they can drag it close to one of the small nails so they can hit it while everyone else takes care of the other nails around the room. The dragon does the same room-wide AoE damage and tank buster Ice Breath that he does in normal, but the hard-hitting Ice Breath hits a lot harder in Savage. So watch mitigation and heals on the dragon tank here. Once the dragon is dead, it will explode on its dying breath and deal damage to anyone caught in the AoE. It also leaves behind a Bulwark buff on the ground that protects the bearer from certain attacks. We let our Airborne tank grab this, whoever it may be on any given pull. The Bulwark will pass to another player if you pass over them, so the Bulwark tank needs to stay away from everyone until the time comes to use it. After the dragon dies, Midgardstormer will do some room-wide damage here you'll need to mitigate, and this attack will kill you if you defeated the dragon too slowly. After that, he'll do dive bombs across half the room while dropping AoEs on the party and targeting DPS and healers with spread AoE markers. Everyone minus the Bulwark tank should stack up in the middle here to bait the AoEs, then spread out on whichever side of the room isn't being dive bombed. The Bulwark tank just needs to make sure they get hit by nothing here. Midgardstormer does this twice in a row, so get back to the center and do the mechanic the same a second time. When Midgardstormer returns to the arena, he will be grounded, meaning the orange debuff tank needs to avoid being auto-attacked. He will cast Time Immemorial immediately, but again, which tanks receive which debuffs is random, so you may or may not need a tank swap. You may also end up needing a Bulwark swap depending on which gets which. In the end, you'll want your Airborne tank tanking the boss, and you'll want your grounded tank having the Bulwark buff. So tanks, just make sure you work out your movements for making sure it ends up like that. Now it's time to actually use the Bulwark. Midgardstormer will one by one mark either the healers or DPS with a fire marker. When it disappears, he will turn to them and use a conal breath in that player's direction, dealing lethal damage to them and anyone caught in the blast. The only way to survive it is to have the Bulwark on you, so you have to pass it between players who are being targeted one at a time. We have the grounded tank hold the debuff on one of Midgardstormer's flanks, while everyone else is near the backside sort of the other flank. Whoever gets the marker runs over to the current Bulwark holder, the Bulwark passes, then the original player quickly runs out of the way before the breath attack comes out. You'll have to do this 4 times total to survive all the fire markers. You'll want to have the Bulwark passing point be a bit closer to the boss so the run for the players isn't as far. The movement has to be quick or the player running away will get clipped by the fire breath. Even still, your Bulwark shenanigans aren't over yet. Midgardstormer will next do a mechanic straight from Nidhogg's final phase with a bit of a twist, where 3 sets of orbs appear one at a time. The first set is always in the center, the second set is in one of the 4 corners, and the final set is in the opposite corner from the second set. Each of these orbs explode in a giant plus sign AoE when they expire. You'll want the party to move to the corner with the final explosions first and stack up tight. At this point, the Bulwark will pass around to everyone remaining who didn't get it earlier, ultimately ending up on a single player. That player is responsible for the tether you see Midgardstormer aiming at the group. That tether will determine the direction Midgardstormer performs a cross-arena AoE line-in, Hot Wings, from Nidhogg. To make getting this tether on the right player a bit harder, there are targeted AoEs on the party as well. For our early kills, we stacked up closer to the center on the side of the final explosions and moved out after the AoEs went out and had the party other than the Bulwark player run even further to make sure the Bulwark player got the tether. This could just as easily be done in a number of other ways, such as starting at the far wall and having the Bulwarked player sprint in faster than everyone else, or even going from side to side in the safe corner that you have with the Bulwark player dodging forward. You're going to see a ton of different strats for this one, and all of them work. After the middle of the room explosions go out, the Bulwark plus Tether player moves back in deep into his hitbox to make sure that no stray players grab the tether off of them. They now have the power to aim Nidhogg wherever your group wants him. We just kept him facing the same direction the whole time, but there are definitely benefits to making him face east or west of the arena instead. The rest of the party should run in a tight diagonal towards wherever Nidhogg's flanks are, and make sure to avoid running directly through so you don't take the tether here. Once all the firewall orbs explode, move outward from Nidhogg's flanks and you'll be safe from the AoEs he's using on the Bulwark target. This attack and all fire breaths you dealt with earlier are immune to tank invuln skills as well, in case you were wondering. Now that's a lot of coordination to do all that in the Nidhogg phase, so if your group just doesn't want to be bothered with all this Bulwark shenanigans, just assign someone to be a sacrificial lamb to that tether and make them do it. Just make sure whether you're doing the Bulwark strat or the sacrifice strat that no one takes the tether off the player when running away from the third orb location. It's really easy to pass. The tether has a much wider hitbox than it appears, so don't try to cut it close. After this, Midgardstormer will leave the arena and do dive bombs plus exaflares plus targeted AoEs. You can stack up the AoEs in the center between the two dive bombs if you want, but this part isn't too bad to just kind of YOLO it. Just watch those exaflares, remember them from normal or from ultimate coil. Remember to keep track of the direction the exaflares are aiming and stay out of their way while dodging everything else. When Midgardstormer comes back, he will be flying again, so if your tanks haven't died and lost their debuffs, make sure the grounded tank provokes as soon as he's targetable. He'll do a tank buster followed by an morn, before doing targeted AoEs and spread lightning AoEs. We stack for the morn, drop the AoEs under that location, then spread for the lightning AoEs. Now we're back to the spinning mechanics, which are a bit more random here, but not by much. Midgardstormer's next set of mechanics depends on which spin he does first here, horizontal or vertical. If he does a vertical spin first, he'll be doing a tank buster plus spread lightning AoEs here, similar to what you did in the first phase. It will of course be accompanied by a second spin. If he does a horizontal spin here first, he'll do the tank buster, then Earthshakers plus the second spin. You did both of these patterns in phase 1, so it shouldn't be a problem. He'll then use Time Immemorial again. Just make sure whichever tank is grounded is tanking. Right after that, he'll target 2 players with Ice AoEs, which you should just drop in the corners of the map, while also starting up some Exaflare AoEs. While Exaflares are going off, he'll begin charging an morn on the party. You'll need to dodge Exaflares while staying stacked for morn here. We group center and just adjusted based on the Exaflare locations, but if you want something that might be a little bit easier, you may want to mark a player and make them responsible for finding where the first Exaflare drop and having everyone gather there instead. If you just gather where the first Exaflare line dropped, you ensure no other Exaflares can cross your path, limiting the need for movement and communication. Just stick a triangle over a tank or something and make them responsible for it. After the Exaflares and morn is done, Midgardstormer will again either do a horizontal or vertical spin. If he does a horizontal spin, he'll use Northern Cross plus Earthshakers, meaning you'll need to position yourself with the sliding without overlapping the other player's AoEs. You'll also need to dodge the second horizontal spin. We get into our Earthshaker positions in his hitbox, then slide out if the second spin is horizontal, or just stay put if the second spin is vertical. The ice will stay on the ground a bit longer, and you'll need to dodge some ground AoEs while sliding, which we just YOLO'd. There will be another random Rai after the ice goes away, followed by a tail end. If you get a vertical spin first here, it will still be the lightning AoEs, but just like with the horizontal pattern, the ground will be iced, so everyone will need to slide into the safe zones we assigned earlier. There will also be those AoEs on the ground, followed by the Rais and the tank buster. Also, regardless of which you get, you're going to get a Time Immemorial before another horizontal or vertical spin. These spins are the same as the non-icy ones you did just before the Exaflares plus morn, so just remember which is which and do them the same. After this, you've pretty much seen the whole fight. You'll get another set of Exaflares plus ice plus morns, and then depending on how quick your ad phase went, you may see another spin mechanic here. Most likely you'll see him start casting another morn right after that last one, and this morn is the morn that never ends. He will morn the group over and over again until all of you are dead, with the damage slightly ramping up after each hit. We actually chose to spread out for this Morn instead of trying to stack up and mitigate it, so we had until he hit all 8 people with the various blasts before the fight was over. I believe tank invulns work here to buy you some extra time if you're desperate for it, but try to just kill him before it comes down to this. And with that, that's going to be a wrap for our O10 Savage guide. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned because I'm only halfway done with all the guides that I plan on doing for this patch. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.